Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video, and today we're going to be doing another edition of What I Am Thinking. Now, for those of you that don't know what this video series is, basically is a video series that I sit down and casually talk to you guys about what's going on in my head. It's like a blog series, and I can talk about anything in the world. Chances are I'm going to talk about something comic related or video game related or geek related, but I can talk about anything if I wanted to. So, what is today's session of What I Am Thinking About? Well, today I would like to talk to you guys about what DC Comics should do video game wise from this point on. Now, Batman Arkham City is coming out soon. Actually, it's coming out tomorrow. Today is the 17th, and I believe it comes out the 18th. I have everything pre-ordered, and I'm going to be picking it up. And Batman Arkham City is slated to be one of the best comic book-based video games to date. The reasons for that is, one, it's a sequel to Batman Arkham Asylum, which is considered one of, if not the best video game based off a comic book right now. Second is that the reviews are coming in and everyone is loving this game. Now, I'm not one to judge a game before it comes out, and we're not talking about Arkham City. But it's worth bringing up Arkham City because DC has recently been doing fairly well with its Batman brand of video games. Now, when it comes down to comic book-based video games, usually comic book video games aren't that good. At least in the grand scheme of things of video games. It's kind of like movie games. There's some hits, but there's more or less misses. And when it comes down to the two companies, DC or Marvel, one can argue very strongly that Marvel does better comic book-based video games. And I would have to agree with that. The Spider-Man series, a lot of the X-Men games, the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. I played Marvel Ultimate Alliance #1, and that was a great game, whether you're a Marvel fan or not. I haven't played 2 yet. But when you look at DC Comics, they haven't really pushed out that many great video games for their comic book characters. I mean, you have Justice League's Heroes, which is an okay game, but in comparison to Marvel Ultimate Alliance, it really wasn't that good. And then you have some of the Batman games like Batman Begins, Batman Vengeance, and then obviously Batman Arkham Asylum. But then you have to look at some of the games that they just do really bad in, like the Superman games, or even that Aquaman game that came out. DC hasn't been well known for their video games, but like I said, recently they've been kind of hitting their strides, and one could say the reason for that is because of Batman Arkham Asylum and now its sequel, Batman Arkham City, which have been not only compelling games story-wise, but has been good gameplay and have had tons of content. It doesn't feel like someone just threw it together. They feel like full games. So my question is this, and this is a question I'm going to pose to you guys, and I'm going to throw out my ideas, is where should DC Comics go after Batman Arkham City? They obviously are going to have a lot of momentum behind them when it comes down to video games with the success of this comic book game. So where do they go? Should they make another Batman game, or should they branch off onto other comic book characters and try to kind of, get those characters established in the video game genre for their comic book characters? This is a tough question, and I have no easy answer to this. On one hand, I think DC should definitely stick with what they know is good, and Batman games tend to do the best out of all their games. One could say the reason for that is because you have a lot of options with Batman games based off the colorful rogue galleries Batman has with villains that are well known. Batman's a very familiar product to people that aren't even comic book fans. The various different gadgets and utilities and tools Batman can use can optimize gameplay. And the fact that Batman isn't an over-the-top superhero. He's a normal man with his suit and his gadgets and his intellect. So it gives you a great sense of challenge, unlike if you're, I hate to say this, but like if you're Superman, you can just pound through everything. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the Batman game, but can the other DC characters do well in their own video games? And if so, what kind of video games should they be? Should they be adventure games? Should they be action games? Should they be puzzle games, RPG games? What kind of games should they be? So let me just throw out some video games that DC Comics could do to make themselves, a little bit stronger in the comic book video game area. First and foremost I think DC should at least try once again to do a DC Universe game. Allow me to explain. And I'm not talking about DC Universe Online, which I'm not going to bring into this discussion because that's an MMORPG. I'm talking about basically console games. Um, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I'm not a Marvel fan, but I did pick up Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1, and that was one of the best comic book-based video games that I played. DC tried to do a similar game with Justice League Heroes, and although entertaining, didn't come close to what Marvel Ultimate Alliance was. What I propose, without them being completely copying Marvel, is that DC tried to make a game like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, give a lot of freedom and customization in the game. I mean, one of the major holdbacks on the DC Justice League Hero games is you can only select 2 characters at a time, and those characters are pre-selected for each mission. The customization isn't that much, and the story wasn't that long. I mean, it did have a few things up on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, like the graphics were better, the story was more compelling, but your selection of characters was low. You can only play 2 characters at a time, and the customization really wasn't that great. If they did do a DC game similar to Marvel Ultimate Alliance in that kind of setup, I forget, that would be an RPG, a kind of a hack and slash RPG, I guess would it be? I think it would be a successful game, and you can have a huge slew of characters from the Justice League to the Teen Titans to the Outsiders to the Justice Society, and take them from multiple universes. I think it would be a pretty good game. Another area they should hit into is Green Lantern. Now, I know they did a Green Lantern movie game, but come on. With the exception of like GoldenEye, movie games usually aren't that good. But if they did a Green Lantern game based off the comic book Green Lantern and worked with that game in that franchise, I think it would actually work off pretty well. Because Green Lantern can do a lot of things with his ring, create a lot of different constructs. And from that, you can have an upgrade systems with each construct. How long they last, how much damage they do, exactly to what effect they can hold things, or, do various different upgrades. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential in a Green Lantern game. What could make the Green Lantern game even more fun is if you made it a multiplayer game so that you can play it as Hal, John, Kyle, or Guy, even Sinestro. And I think there's a lot that you can do with that. And if you make it an open world game, kind of a sandbox open world game on where you can go and what you can do, gives you that great range of freedom that can come from being Green Lantern. So I think a Green Lantern game would definitely be a good idea. Another game series that would work would probably be a Superman game series, but you're going to have to play things delicate with a Superman video game series, because with Superman, he's such a powerful character that using him, you have to be sure that you use him in the right kind of video game. If you had a Superman game, it has to be very over-the-top with action. It has to be full of action because he's such a powerful character. He needs powerful enemies and powerful environments and powerful stories. Word powerful getting thrown around there a lot. But the last Superman game, one like Superman 64, worst game ever made. I haven't played Superman Returns, but that game I heard didn't do that well either. If they did a Superman game, they have to make sure that it works out well, and you can't damper Superman's powers to make the gameplay better. You have to go with Superman powers, and then you have to just make over-the-top villains, like Brainiac, like Darkseid, like Doomsday, like Bizarro. Have him even fight some ridiculously over-the-top robots Lex Luthor can make. And have it kind of like the Green Lantern game, be like an open world, like be a sandbox game where you can select the missions and be the hero Superman. So I think that would be a good game to do. Another game series that I think would be good for DC Comics to jump into would be to do a fighting game. They did do DC versus Mortal Kombat, and the game was okay, but there was a lot of flaws to it. And the problem is once you played Mortal Kombat 2011, it's hard to go back to any of the older games. But to do fighting games just exclusively DC characters, I think would be really fun. Obviously, you're going to have to augment the powers a bit, but I think it would actually be pretty fun to have a make it kind of old school, give it kind of 2D graphics. But I think it would actually be pretty fun to have a fighting game series for DC Comics. Now, these are kind of just ideas thrown out there. I think DC Comics, if they did do more video games, to do games that include a whole wide variety of casts of characters. So, for example, if you're going to do a game, do a Justice League game, or do a Teen Titans game, or do a DC Universe game, because then you can utilize characters such as Aquaman or Wonder Woman, who are great characters, but probably aren't the most loved characters by general public, and have them next to like Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, characters that are very hot right now when it comes down to DC. Is there a lot of trouble doing DC comic based video games? Yes. See, the thing is DC Comics with their characters has very over the top characters sometimes, very powerful characters. So making video games based off them can be tough. Batman's easy because Batman's a very versatile character and is very a character that you can put a lot of challenges to. And while there's a lot of characters like that through the DC universe, they're not as well known. Everyone that's a comic book fan that is part of DC fandom knows who Nightwing is, but the general public may not know who Nightwing is. I have to explain it to some people. Oh yeah, there's Nightwing. Who's Nightwing? The first Robin. There's more than one Robin. Or, various other characters. Let's take, for example, just running through my head, Green Arrow. Some people may know Green Arrow, but the general public isn't going to jump up and down for joy if a Green Arrow game came out. Hmm? So I think if they did any video games, the characters that they would focus on are Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and then do DC Universe based video games. This is just kind of something I'm thinking right in my head because they've been doing a lot with Batman, but how can they branch out? How can they do different things with different characters? What kind of people, what kind of developers would they use? I believe it's Rocksteady that's been doing, or Rockstar. I think it's Rocksteady that's been doing the Batman games. Could be wrong. And they've been doing good jobs, but do you stick with them? Do you have Capcom do some stuff? Do you have, let's say, Nintendo do some stuff? Do you have some stuff from Valve? Do you have, I don't know, just random things? I mean, who would you have as the developers? So the question I guess I'm going to pose to you guys is this. Is if DC were to make more video games, which they're going to, after the Batman Arkham City game, what games would you like to see them make? And what developers would you like to see them have on the games? And what kind of games would it be? Like, would you want a Superman game done by Ubisoft and that is an open world sandbox game? Let me know. I mean, this is kind of an interesting subject that keeps on going in my head that I'm not too sure where I stand because I want to see more games, but it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough. So let me know what you think. I mean, this is just what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? That said, this is Andrew saying peace out for now.